The message arrived at 3 in the morning, local time in the Persian Gulf, just after I had finished a 14-hour shift on the rig. I'm leaving you and moving to Palm Springs with my 25-year-old babe. I'm taking all our money with me. My name is Ethan Caldwell. I am 52 years old and have spent the past 27 years working oil platforms across the world. My hands were still slick with grease when I opened the message from Lauren, my wife of 18 years. Before I could even react, another notification appeared. A screenshot of our joint account. The balance showed $0.02, where $142,000 should have been. She had even added a kiss emoji, as if she found the whole thing amusing. I didn't throw my phone or lash out. Instead, I sat silently on my bunk in the cramped quarters I shared with 2 other riggers and typed a short reply. Sure. Good luck. Then I switched the phone off and went to take a shower. The next morning, the crew noticed something was off when I skipped breakfast and went straight to work. Jackson, my second in command, kept glancing my way during safety checks, but he was smart enough not to ask. We had 16 men depending on us to keep this floating metal city safe and fully operational. Personal problems stayed personal. At lunch, I checked my email. Lauren had already filed for divorce, claiming I had abandoned the marriage by spending too much time overseas. She'd hired an attorney named Coleman, the kind who specialized in high-asset divorces, and was now demanding spousal support based on my excessive income. The message also mentioned that her emotional support partner had moved into our house in Odessa. I closed the laptop without a word and went back to work. That night, I sent one email not to Lauren, but to my cousin Tyler, an accountant in Houston. Time to activate Protocol Winter, I wrote. It was an old code phrase from years ago, one that needed no explanation. Within 3 minutes, he responded, already on it. Don't reply to anything until you're stateside. I still had 2 weeks left in my rotation, 2 more weeks of 12-hour shifts under 110-degree heat, while the life I'd built slowly unraveled back home. The crew would have understood if I'd requested emergency leave, but what would that have changed? Better to finish the job, collect the paycheck, and face the wreckage later. That evening, as I turned in, the rig supervisor, Marcus, stopped by my quarters. Everything stable? He asked, and it was clear he wasn't only referring to the drilling operation. Everything's under control, I told him, and it was just not in the way Lauren would ever know. I had met Lauren 19 years earlier at my friend's fishing supply store in Odessa. She was 31 then, full of jokes about city people who thought catching bass required special talent. I was 33, already 10 years into oil work, home between contracts and helping my buddy restock inventory. We got married 11 months later, quick, but it felt right. By that time, I'd built a stable life. My house was fully paid off thanks to a lucky investment in a small producer that later got bought out. My career was steady, and I was earning well on international rigs. She said she admired my discipline and dependability. I admired her confidence and easy charm. The rotation schedule was demanding, 2 months on, 1 month off, but the money was remarkable. In 6 months, I could earn what most people in our town made in 3 years. We agreed it was worth the distance. She'd manage things at home. I'd secure our future. Around the 12th year, small cracks began to form. Subtle at first, complaints about missed birthdays, questions about whether I really needed to take the Saudi contract, little comments about how her friends' husbands were always home for dinner parties. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. When I turned 47, she stopped asking when I'd be home. The photos stopped. Our video calls grew shorter and quieter, replaced by polite check-ins. I told myself it was just what happened in long-distance marriages. Comfort replacing excitement, predictability taking over where uncertainty used to live. Last Christmas, I came home to find our entire house redone. New furniture, new paint, new atmosphere, all without a word to me. When I asked about it, she said simply that I needed a change. I didn't ask what kind of change she meant. 2 months ago, I noticed transfers from our joint account into one I didn't recognize. House repairs, she explained. Foundation work. Before I left for this rotation, I drove by to check. There were no signs of construction, just a black Audi in the driveway that I'd never seen before. For weeks ago, she stopped answering my calls altogether, replying only with brief texts about being busy with a new project. I almost flew home right then, but instead, I convinced myself to trust the woman I'd spent 18 years with. 3 days ago, our neighbor Raymond sent me a photo. A moving truck parked in front of my house. Thought you should know, his message read. I didn't answer. Sometimes silence is all a man has left. Sometimes the truth doesn't need interference. The day after her text, I wrapped up my shift and returned to my quarters. The satellite phone rang. It was Tyler. "You sitting down?" he asked. I told him to just tell me. He didn't soften the blow. "She's been planning this for at least 14 months, he said. Started with small transfers, 2,000 here, 3,000 there, into a separate account under her maiden name. Then larger ones in the last 90 days. Total of $214,000 moved. Not just the $142,000 from your joint account." The room felt like it tilted sideways for a moment. That was far more than what our savings should have held. "There's more," Tyler continued. "She changed the beneficiary on your life insurance policy 6 months ago and took out a $40,000 home equity line of credit against your house. Forged your signature on the paperwork." I sat on the edge of my bunk, listening to the steady hum of the generators beneath the floor. 18 years together. Nearly 2 decades of shared life, and she had been quietly erasing me piece by piece for over a year. "The guy?" I finally asked. "Who is he?" "Chase Dalton," Tyler replied. 25, just like she said. Used to be a personal trainer. No steady employment for the last 3 years. 3 earlier relationships with women over 45. Each one ended within 18 months. I didn't need anyone to explain the pattern to me. "Ethan," Tyler's tone dropped to something heavier. "There are credit card charges for 2 one-way tickets to Palm Springs, scheduled for next Tuesday." That was only 3 days away. She hadn't merely left. She was attempting to disappear completely, taking everything before I could even make it home. I ended the call and sat in darkness for a long while. I didn't turn on the lights. I just stared into nothing as fragments of memory shifted and fell into new, unsettling arrangements. The late-night phone calls she used to take outside. Her sudden obsession with fitness 3 years ago. The complaints about finances, even though we had more than enough saved. What crushed me most wasn't the betrayal itself. It was the precision. The quiet, deliberate dismantling of our life while smiling across the dinner table, while thanking me for every transfer I made, while saying she missed me. Something hardened inside me then. The grief condensed into resolve. I went to my locker, retrieved my laptop, and opened an email account that only Tyler and I knew existed. From there, I logged into the holding company we had set up 8 years earlier after I'd watched a coworker lose everything in his own divorce. We called it Winter Holdings, a name born from my grandmother's maiden name and the small creek that ran through our old property. When the account loaded, the balance showed $1.6 million. For 8 years, I had been channeling 70% of my income there, all legal, all declared, but carefully separated from our marital assets through the corporate structure Tyler designed. I typed a single message to my attorney in Houston. Proceed with Operation Cold Return. Then I closed the laptop and went to the mess hall for coffee. For the first time in days, hunger returned. 38 hours after my rotation ended, I landed in Houston. Tyler met me at the airport, handed me a burner phone and a thick folder. "She's been calling your regular number non-stop since yesterday," he said as we walked toward his car. "The bank froze the account she transferred the money into. Large, unusual movement, standard protocol. They need you to confirm in person." "She doesn't know I'm back?" I asked. "Only me and Grant do," he replied, referring to my lawyer. "But there's more." He pulled out his tablet and scrolled through a chain of text messages. Between Lauren and someone saved simply as D. I read them carefully. Plans for their new life, jokes about me working overseas while they spent my money, Talk about a house they'd already placed a deposit on in Palm Springs. One exchange from 2 days earlier made me stop reading. Lauren, bank froze the money. Need Ethan to verify in person. What do we do? D, he's still on the rig for another 10 days. Tell him there's an emergency with your mom. Get him to authorize you to handle it. You're still his wife. Lauren, he's not answering my calls. D, try harder. We need that money before the closing next week, or we look at Plan B. Lauren, I'm not comfortable with Plan B. D, it's just insurance money. He works a dangerous job for a reason. People have accidents all the time. I handed the tablet back to Tyler. My hands felt cold, but steady. Are these admissible in court? I asked. They're from her phone's cloud backup, he said. She used your Apple ID when she set up her new device last year and never changed the password. Everything syncs straight into your storage. We drove directly to Grant's office. By the time we arrived, he had already prepared the divorce petition, a criminal complaint for the forged home equity loan, and an emergency motion to freeze all assets. There's a complication, Grant said once we were seated. She filed a domestic violence claim yesterday. Says she left because of emotional abuse and financial control. Claims she feared for her safety. That's ridiculous, I said. I've been 6,000 miles away for 7 weeks. Doesn't matter, he replied. It's a tactic to sway the judge and justify taking the funds. Her lawyer's pushing for an emergency hearing tomorrow. They want a restraining order and exclusive access to the house. Essentially, she's trying to have you banned from your own property while her boyfriend lives there. Grant paused before adding, and there's more. The home equity loan, she's already spent it. Transferred the money to an LLC registered under Chase Dalton's name just 3 days after receiving it. I took a deep breath and steadied myself. Options. We counterfile, I said after a moment. Fraud, forgery, alienation of affection, criminal conspiracy, all supported by those text messages. We request an immediate freeze on every account and the LLC. Grant nodded and slid a paper across the desk. And we file this. I glanced down. Motion to dismiss domestic violence claim, evidence of perjury. What evidence? I asked. A faint smile crossed his face. Your company badge logs prove you've been on that rig continuously for 7 weeks. Your passport entries match. And I've already subpoenaed your phone records, every call between you two for the past year. Nothing to suggest threats or arguments. I signed where he indicated. One more thing, Grant said. When she's served, you need to look surprised. She can't know you're back. Officially, you're still overseas. I nodded. Understood. As I left his office, my regular phone buzzed. A message from Lauren. Please call me. It's an emergency. I need you. I ignored it. The trap had been set, but this time not by her. That night, I stayed at Tyler's place and slept better than I had in weeks. The following morning, I logged into the home security system I had installed 3 years earlier. The one Lauren had either forgotten about or assumed I couldn't reach from abroad. The live feed showed a young man lounging beside the pool. Our pool. Drinking from my whiskey collection and wearing what looked like my old college sweatshirt. He was on the phone, laughing, his feet propped on the patio furniture I had built myself. Moments later, Lauren appeared in view. She looked uneasy, pacing while she spoke to someone off camera. I couldn't hear the words, but her posture told the story. Their plan was unraveling. Tyler entered the room carrying 2 cups of coffee. You should see this, he said, opening his laptop. He'd spent the night digging deeper into Chase Dalton's past. What Tyler uncovered that night changed everything. He's done this before, Tyler said, his expression hardening. 3 times. He turned the laptop toward me. Every time it's the same story. He meets a woman, usually married, always financially secure. The relationship develops. She leaves her husband, drains whatever assets she can, and they run off together. Within 18 months, he disappears with what's left. The evidence filled the screen, news articles, court filings, scattered social media posts. 3 women over a span of 5 years. Each one left financially devastated. One was still paying off credit card debt in her own name, debt he had racked up before vanishing. "There's more," Tyler said quietly. He was briefly a person of interest in the death of his second girlfriend's ex-husband. A suspicious car crashed 6 weeks after the divorce papers were filed. The man drove off a cliff on a road he'd traveled for 20 years. No charges were ever filed, but the implication was clear. My phone rang again, Lauren calling my regular number. I let it go to voicemail. Tyler hit play on speaker. "Ethan, please. I need you to call the bank." Her voice broke between what sounded like sobs. "There's been a misunderstanding with our account. I was just moving the money into a safer investment like we talked about, but the bank froze everything. I can't access any funds. Please call them and tell them it's okay. I'm really scared." It was a convincing performance. 2 weeks earlier, I might have believed her. "She's desperate," Grant said later that day when we met him for lunch. "The closing date on the Palm Springs house is in 5 days. They need that money." "What's our next move?" I asked. "The emergency hearing is scheduled for this afternoon," Grant replied. "Judge Calloway will be presiding. She has no patience for false domestic violence claims. We've already prepared your alibi and submitted your badge and passport data. The bank funds are frozen, and we filed to have them released solely to you." He paused. "But there's something else you should see." He slid a folder across the table. "Your neighbor Raymond sent these photos this morning. Inside were images of furniture being loaded into a moving truck, my furniture. Family heirlooms that had been in my family for generations. They're clearing out the house," Grant confirmed. "Looks like they intend to vanish whether the bank releases the funds or not." I closed the folder and handed it back. "Change of plans." Both men looked at me. "I'm going home," I said. "That's not advisable," Grant began. "Not to confront them," I interrupted. "To watch. From Raymond's house. I want to see this with my own eyes. And I want to be there when they're served, not hiding behind paperwork. I want Lauren to see my face when it all collapses." Grant hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "I'll make the arrangements." As we left the restaurant, a message appeared on my burner phone. From Raymond. "They're packing your grandfather's desk now. The one you restored. Thought you'd want to know. Some thefts go beyond money. Some betrayals carve deeper than any wound." The 6-hour drive to Odessa gave me time to think. Grant coordinated with the sheriff to serve the papers at 9 o'clock the next morning. Tyler set up surveillance equipment from Raymond's house across the street, where I would stay overnight. When I arrived just after midnight, Raymond met me with a firm, silent handshake. He'd spent 30 years as a petroleum engineer, a man who didn't need explanations. "She doesn't know you're watching?" he asked quietly once we were inside. "None at all," I replied. "They've been packing all day," he said. "Taking the valuable stuff, leaving the junk. 2 moving trucks have already been here. Bigger ones are coming in the morning for the final load." I nodded, processing the details. "Anyone else stop by?" "Yesterday," he said. "A woman with a clipboard. Looked like a real estate agent. She was taking photos." "They're selling the house," I muttered. "Looks that way," he confirmed. I called Grant, who promised to check the property records first thing in the morning. At 3 o'clock, unable to sleep, I sat at Raymond's kitchen table going through the documents Tyler had assembled. Bank statements showing Lauren's slow siphoning of our accounts, phone records with hours of calls to Chase stretching back over a year, and credit card charges for hotel rooms in our own town on weekends she claimed to be visiting her sister. The pattern was painfully clear. This wasn't a single act of betrayal. It was a long, calculated extraction, a deliberate dismantling of everything we had built together, piece by piece. By sunrise, Grant texted confirmation. Lauren had listed our house with a real estate agency 2 days earlier. The asking price was 30% below market value, designed for a quick sale. She'd even forged my signature on the listing agreement. At 8:30 that morning, I watched from Raymond's window as Lauren and Chase packed the final boxes into his black Audi. Small valuables, easy to conceal. My grandmother's silver frames. The antique watch my father had given me before he died. At 8:45, a large moving truck arrived. 3 men stepped out, ready to begin loading. At 8:55, an unmarked car rolled up behind them, blocking the truck. 2 sheriff's deputies and a woman in a suit stepped out. Grant had sent a court officer with them. "It's time," I said quietly to Raymond. I crossed the street as the deputies approached my front door. Lauren opened it, her face shifting from mild irritation to dawning confusion as they introduced themselves. "Mrs. Caldwell," one of the deputies said, "we have paperwork to serve you and the gentleman on the property." I lingered just out of view, watching as the color drained from her face. She called for Chase, who appeared behind her, his arms sliding protectively around her waist. That was when I stepped forward. The look on Lauren's face is something I'll never forget, shock giving way to fear, then to cold calculation. Chase looked completely lost. "Ethan," she whispered, "you're supposed to be on the rig." "Surprise," I said evenly, nodding for the deputies to continue. They handed over the stack of documents, an emergency restraining order against them, a full freeze on all assets, a criminal complaint for forgery, a nullification of the fraudulent home listing, and a notice of divorce proceedings citing fraud and criminal conspiracy. "You can't do this," Chase blurted, squaring his shoulders as if the act alone would give him authority. "She's terrified of you. We have a domestic violence claim. Dismissed this morning," I interrupted evenly, "by Judge Calloway. Hard to abuse someone from 6,000 miles away. The judge found the text messages about your so-called Plan B, the one involving my insurance policy, very persuasive." The color drained from his face. Lauren stepped forward, eyes glistening. "Ethan, this is all a misunderstanding. I was only saving our documents." I finished for her, gesturing toward the moving truck. "Protecting our assets by emptying the house? Planning for our future by selling it without my knowledge?" She had no answer. "You have 30 minutes to collect personal belongings only," the court officer announced firmly. "Clothing and toiletries. Everything else stays until court inventory." As they stepped back inside under supervision, I turned to leave. "Where are you going?" Lauren called after me. I didn't turn around. "Home." 3 weeks later, the hearing took place. I sat at one table with Grant while Lauren and her lawyer occupied the other. Chase, unsurprisingly, was absent. He had vanished 2 days after being served, taking her remaining cash and jewelry with him. Exactly the pattern Tyler had uncovered. The judge reviewed every piece of evidence. Bank statements, forged signatures, phone records, text messages, location data. When she reached the thread discussing Plan B and the insurance payout, she stopped reading and looked directly at Lauren. "Mrs. Caldwell, are you aware of the penalties for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud? Or worse?" Lauren's attorney leaned close, whispering frantically. "It wasn't like that, Your Honor," Lauren stammered. Chase was joking. "I never would have." "Save it for the criminal proceedings," the judge interrupted coldly. "This court's concern is the dissolution of marriage and division of assets." She continued reading, pausing occasionally to shake her head in disbelief. When she finished, she removed her glasses and looked up. "In my 30 years on the bench," she said, "I have rarely seen such a deliberate and methodical act of financial deception within a marriage." Her gaze shifted to Lauren. "You drained joint accounts, forged documents, and planned to flee the state with marital assets." Then she turned to me, her tone softening slightly. "Mr. Caldwell, while your creation of a holding company might appear unconventional, the court finds that you consistently fulfilled all household obligations, paid taxes appropriately, and made no attempt to conceal assets from the government, only to safeguard them from future misuse." The ruling was decisive. Every asset transferred by Lauren was to be returned to me. The house was confirmed as solely my property. Her petition for spousal support was denied. Most satisfying of all, the judge referred the forgery and conspiracy evidence to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. When the hearing ended, Lauren tried to approach me. I walked straight past her. Some victories don't require words. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of my mountain cabin outside Missoula, Montana, 40 acres of pine forest and meadow that had always belonged to Winterlight Holdings. I had purchased the land 5 years earlier as a retirement plan, one Lauren never knew existed. Her forgery charges were eventually reduced in a plea deal. No prison time, only 5 years of probation and restitution she would likely never finish paying. Last I heard, she was living with her sister in Tulsa working retail. Chase had resurfaced in Arizona, courting a recently divorced doctor, his pattern continuing undisturbed. I had taken early retirement after 27 years in the oil fields. Between my savings, investments, and the steady natural gas royalties from a small property in Arkansas, I had more than enough to live quietly for the rest of my life. Raymond still called from Odessa now and then with news. I had sold the house, too many memories, none worth keeping. He helped pack the last of my belongings, shipping the family heirlooms to Montana and donating the rest. That afternoon, the mail brought an envelope from Tyler, the final paperwork dissolving Winterlight Holdings. The purpose completed, taxes cleared, chapter closed. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, I poured myself a glass of bourbon and settled onto the porch swing I'd built over the summer. For the first time in years, no one waited on my word. No crew counting on me. No wife pretending to miss me. Only the hush of wind through the pines. My phone rang. A new project manager from a Canadian oil firm offering a consulting role. Good pay, little travel, just sharing the knowledge I'd earned over decades. I'll think about it, I told him, and I meant it, but not tonight. Tonight belonged entirely to me, to the quiet, to the peace I had fought for, and to the life I was finally living on my own terms.